any act of that officer that is without a legal basis and is in violation of his own regulations, the regulations of that department.
It's not just a problem in a community with people of color. It's a problem in even suburban communities.
Rule number one in terms of observing the police is to recognize that in fact you do have a right to observe them. Assuming you're not in a completely out of control, dangerous, riotous situation, the public has the right to monitor police conduct and to monitor police encounters.
Copwatch is not at all a political party. We consider ourselves a grassroots movement to encourage and stimulate the desire on the part of the citizenry to control police functioning, to hold the police accountable for their activities, for what they do.
People are looking out after other people, particularly when it comes to police and communities where there's a lot of poor people or people of color. I wouldn't say that people aren't cop watching right now. I think it happens. They may not have the resources, say, that Copwatch, the organization, has, or, I mean, they may not even particularly know all their rights or what they can actually do about a situation, but there are people out there who do watch what goes down.
Generally, what one finds is that there is a fairly small group of officers who get a disproportionate number of complaints. There may be various reasons for that. It's certainly true that certain kinds of assignments generate more complaints than others, but I think even if you begin to weed out that factor, you can see that there are officers who seem to be more abusive, seem to be less caring about citizens' rights, more prone to use force inappropriately, and so on, and they get the predominance of the complaints.
We are not anti-anything, I don't think, except brutality and misconduct. We are for the police being accountable, and we take a positive position on that by going out and educating the public, publishing our journal, telling the truth to people, training people on how to cop watch. This is not anti-police.
You know, part of monitoring police conduct is trying to identify when misconduct has occurred. And there's really two levels of misconduct. One is whether or not the police officer has breached a particular law, a legal obligation. The California Penal Code has several obligations, kind of minimum standards of what police officers have to do. They have to wear, for example, some form of identification. But beyond that, there's a whole nother level of standards at work, and that is the policy standards of a particular police department, the administrative standards. And those policies are usually the frontline enforcement tool, if you will. And part of monitoring police conduct and doing something about police misconduct is learning about those policies and finding out what specific obligations a particular community puts on a police department, enforcing those through observation and filing complaints, and also working to reform those policies.
Often when people think about police misconduct, they think of sort of the most dramatic and egregious examples, the Rodney King beating. Those are excessive force acts. At their most extreme, they become murders and homicides. The vast majority of instances of police misconduct are not that kind of an example. They're very often excessive force, but they can be excessive force, for example, very, very common, tightening handcuffs too tight, which if you've never had it happen to you, doesn't sound like anything. If you've had it happen, you know it can be really excruciatingly painful.
When we started Copwatch, we were already familiar with a lot of the faces in the area, a lot of the people on Telegraph Avenue. When it comes to doing another area, it's really advisable that you have some people from the neighborhood that you're going to be working in, that they're going out with you. It takes time to get the area ready for Copwatch, and you don't want to just appear on the scene with your, your police scanner and your clipboards and everything, because people will think that you're just part of the special task force or something. So one very important thing is lots of literature. You have your goals written up, all this kind of stuff. We have all our papers. And to spend time talking with the community and find out, well, do you have a problem with police brutality? If everybody's loving the police and having a great time, we're not going to go there.
I don't believe that there is more police brutality. I think that there's just as much today as there was years ago before Rodney King. The only difference is that nobody knew about it because it wasn't videotaped. People didn't take pictures of it. What happened to Rodney King happens every day. But it just wasn't exposed. So no, I don't believe there's more. I think that has always been just as much as there is now.
We say don't carry anything on you when you're cop watching that is illegal, obviously, or anything that would give the police an opportunity to bust you. So if you have a pocket knife, don't bring it. It'll cause confusion. If you are riding a bike around, make sure you have a license, make sure you have a light, make sure it's up to code in every way. Same with if you're driving a car, if you want to do that. Don't give them any opportunity to bust you, so that if they do harass you, we know why. It's because of your involvement in observing the police.
We have a video camera, a penal code, scanner, still camera. Okay, now we're still missing our clipboard. We need our clipboard with the incident reports on there. And the incident reports are for witnesses, and it's for cop watchers to take incidents of a particular incident that happened, if it's an arrest or if it's something that somebody saw, somebody witnessed or arrest. This is what we'll use.
When observing the police, it's very important to remain visible to the officer at all times. Try to avoid any sudden movements. Try not to approach them from behind. They can become startled and overreact. These kinds of overreactions can lead to serious injury and have in the past. When a cop watcher approaches an encounter with police, they must be very careful to make sure that their hands are already exposed to the officer and highly visible to the officer. This is not the time to reach into your pocket to get a cigarette or a pencil or to lower the volume on your scanner. Police officers have often used the excuse that someone was reaching in their pocket as a justification for perpetrating violence against a cop watcher. Remain calm. If an officer tells you that you have to back off, to move along, tell the officer calmly that you have no intention of interfering in legal police business, but that you do have a right to observe. It is also very important to make sure that you get the badge number and to record any relevant details, time, place, witnesses. Make sure you get witnesses' phone numbers and any other information that may become important later when it comes to a matter of filing complaints or initiating litigation against an officer or his or her department. Oftentimes, the kind of incidents that you will see as a cop watcher are not the major brutality or physical assaults, but patterns of harassment, improper stops, searches, over attention from the police department, sometimes even threatening or intimidating behavior on the part of the police department.
You approach the situation, we encourage you not to run, because that will encourage other people to run and create an incident in and of itself. So we walk determinedly to the site. The two cop watchers approach. One cop watcher is responsible, they'll have the clipboard, they're responsible for getting information. So they will talk to witnesses around the scene. Did you see what happened? What's going on? Try and get some idea of what's happening. The other cop watchers should be up there where the police and the arrestee or whoever it is are interacting. So the one person's listening to the cop conversation, the other person's gathering information over here. Share the information. Then you take a minute, you say, well, what did you get? Well, this is it. Well, what's happening? Blah, blah, blah. Get a firm grasp of the situation first before you open your mouth, before you start yelling, before you start doing anything. Really understand what's happening. It's very important to know what witnesses are around. Those witnesses can be critical, and it's up to you, Copwatch, to get those, and also to get the badge number. That's the most important thing. Get the victim's name, the cop badge number, video camera or a still camera, something to record. This was very effective last night when the police were towing all the cars on Telegraph and Durand. And we were able to videotape and photograph the fact that there were no tow-away zone posters around.
First of all, I personally prefer, I like the videotaping. I think that, you know, a picture says, you know, 1,000 words. And it's nice to catch them right in the act. But even before we used video cameras, I think we did fairly well by approaching people, getting their names, getting the badge number of the policeman, trying to objectively record what is actually taking place.
I think the best thing a cop watcher can do is just be there and just watch the police, and when the cop says move on, just say no, I'm not going to move on, or I'm going to back off, or I'm not going to leave. Because just the fact that we're watching, I think, has really changed the way the cops operate in Southside. And
when the police are dealing with an individual, you know, we have to be real sensitive to the people that are being dealt with by the police, and that they may, you know, the police sometimes, if a third person comes up and says, hey officer, what are you doing, and why are you doing that, cop says, oh yeah, you turn around, and they'll take it out on this other person. So we don't want to escalate situations. We want to document, we want to observe, we want to help this person get their rights, but we don't want to get the police pissed off to where they take it out on this guy.
When a police officer stops someone on the street, they do have the authority, for officer safety reasons, to do a limited search, to essentially a pat-down search, to make sure that there are no weapons or contraband. Pat-down search means just that, to check the exterior of one's clothing, to make sure that the suspect cannot grab a knife or a weapon or something that's going to do harm. It doesn't mean open up all your bags and empty your pockets. Now, if you've been arrested, however, if there is a lawful arrest, police officers do have the right to do a search incident to an arrest, the search that's part of the arrest procedure. And typically part of the booking process is going to be a fairly search of your person and your belongings. You know, police officers violate people's rights sometimes because they think they can get away with it, because they assume that these particular individuals don't know their rights. And one way to deal with it is for folks to get educated and to show that it's something that people are aware of and are in fact going to assert.
I feel like you have to be kind of careful in approaching the situation, but if you can speak to the person that's being stopped and ask them if they know why they're being stopped, if there's something specific that you can say to the officer, like, you know, why are you holding this person? Why are you stopping this person? You know, what are they being accused of? To be able to say something to the officer that might make him or her reconsider what it is that he's doing, she's doing. To possibly have other people, if there are other people around the area that you can call, you know, get other people around there so that there's not just, you know, 2 cop watchers or whoever there. If there's more people there, then, you know, the chances are that the cop will back off.
a lot of people really just can't believe that the cops would do something wrong. I mean, they've been brought up to just believe that a lot of these, you know, middle-class kids, middle-class backgrounds, they've just been brought up with kind of the myth that the cop is there to protect me. But I think gradually, that's one of the things that happens when kids live in Southside for a while, is they start seeing cops just screwing around with homeless people just for no reason, or you know, this recent massive police presence on Telegraph that just out of control, and people walk by and they say, my God, is this really necessary? And they gradually see that the cops are really there not to enforce laws or to protect people, but just to scare people away. And that's really all they're there for right now. That's their intended purpose, and that's what they're doing, is just scaring kids away from the avenue.
You know, people sometimes don't want to see what goes on behind closed doors or at night when, you know, it's not in the public eye. Copwatch makes people see the truth about police misconduct.
When we walk up to a situation, don't assume who is right and who is wrong. Sometimes we get into the habit, we get jaded. We've seen so many incidents where the police have been abusive or harassing or wrong that we'll walk up to a situation thinking, oh, here go the pigs again, you know, just being piggy. And then we'll realize that they're actually they're actually stopping a rapist or, you know, doing some possibly productive social work here. So we don't want to make assumptions. You know, maybe this person just murdered somebody and the police are handcuffing them. Maybe that, you know, we're going to look silly if we come up, hey, let him go. You know, So we try to assess the situation based on the facts.
There's community outreach where you talk to the people in the communities that you're out on the street in, and try to get a rapport with them, let them know who you are, what you're doing, you know, how you could be a service to them, or help them understand how they could be a service to themselves, how they can help themselves. And then there's casework where we try to help the people who've had incidents by referring them to lawyers or helping them with their PRC complaints, things like that. I think probably the most important aspects of Copwatch is community outreach and casework.
Well, I suppose the first lesson in observing police abuse and police conduct is the hard lesson that what the law books say our rights are is unfortunately very different too often from what happens on the street. So the information that we can provide about what your legal rights are, many folks are going to find that doesn't always take place. So I have to caution all the advice we give with that very unpleasant advice.
Our goals are to increase community interest and awareness of the police, period. You got two scenarios. One where when the police come, everybody's just so afraid and so freaked out by the police that they turn the other way and they don't look. And then we know what happens when nobody's watching, the worst. So what we want to do is get everybody to look at those situations, to stop and watch. We like it when there's a crowd around. The idea of more accountability hopefully acts as a deterrent to police, and the police will know that they have to conduct themselves according to the law.
Getting active is probably the best thing that a young person can do, because, you know, there are lots of people out there who assume that we don't know anything, or that we think we know too much, or who assume that our experiences don't really count since, you know, we're not adults and we can't vote. But what we have to say has a lot to do with how things are done. We just got to let them know that we are smart and that we can work, that we can and are willing to be out there and do what needs to be done.